Hello, Cleveland. This is Alex Hoffman from the Too Much Effing Perspective podcast, and welcome to Quick Taps, short episodes with short stories for short attention spans. Our theme today, show-offs, Spinal Tap moments that happen when bands have shows that for one reason or another are just a little off. Actually, a lot off. Our first story comes from New York-based YouTube star Kyle Gordon, who released a comedy album earlier this year modestly titled Kyle Gordon is Great. Kyle has us ponder the timeless question, if you perform and nobody shows up, did you really perform at all? Alan and I certainly know that feeling.
I did a show in a 200-seat theater, and literally the only people in the audience were the host and his girlfriend. And the whole time she was in the audience yelling at him like, no one finds this funny. Like, just go on to the next joke, Brian. Come on, let's go. And they're pretending as if there's like a huge audience there, but it's just the three of us. And since I do musical comedy, I was schlepping my guitar around, and I just decided to play Santeria, and I went home. Why even do my act? I'm just Santeria with the full solo.
Our next story comes from Cam Herdt, host of the podcast Best Show Ever, who tells us about the time he fired his ex-boss during a gig.
My boss at my first job out of college, he's a VP of marketing. He's like a 30-something dude who had done Second City in the past, and he got me signed up at Second City when he was like drunk at a trade show. He's like, "You're doing it. You're gonna love it," and like I didn't necessarily want to do it, but he signed me up. And this guy was like a handful. Like, we would go to trade shows, he'd get really trashed, and I'd have to like take him back to his room, cheating on his wife. Really weird, kind of old school sort of boss. Right out of college, I was like, what is this, Mad Men? Like, what's going on? Anyway, I eventually get fired from that job. Like, I'm in the throes of improv now, doing shows all the time. I'm posting about them all the time. He sees that I'm posting about shows, and so he shows up to one of them. And they're calling all the names of the comedians out on stage at the same time. I go out there, he's in the front row, and he's like yelling out my name. Super embarrassing. We go backstage after the show, and there's all the other comedians back there. And I'm like, man, my old boss is in the front row, and this guy is like bad news. I'm going to split right away if you guys don't mind. I'm not going to hang out. They're like, yeah, dude, get out of here. Go. Of course. So I bolt immediately, get out of the theater. And then my friend Otto, who is a really funny but really quiet dude, texts me the next day, and he's like, hey, I think I might have screwed up yesterday. I left the green room and some guy was looking for you, and I said that you had to leave because your shitty boss who harassed a bunch of women and was like a drunk was outside. And so he had to leave. And I think that might have been your boss. I'm like, yeah, man, it was. I had a voicemail from the boss. If you don't want me to show up at your shows, you can just let me know. And yeah, it's like this whole interaction. And I oddly have him to thank for getting me into comedy. I was trying to get away from him, but he's honestly the guy that got me on the path. So.
And our last one is from Gregory Mahdesian and Ryan Berti of the band Swerve, who released their EP The Darkness in the summer of 2024. Greg and Ryan tell us about the time an obnoxious rocker from a famous band buried an entire one of their shows in the white stuff.
So we were playing this venue called Harvard and Stone, and we get there and we do sound check. Like, nobody's at the venue because it's not open yet, except for the booker, the staff, and then the booker's friend. And the booker was Scottish, and his friend was this guy. Oh man, I don't remember his name. He wasn't like a founding member, but he was basically the bassist for Snow Patrol. And he wasn't on the big record, but he joined later. He was wearing like a fedora style hat, and I'm in Snow Patrol. Like, he's really cool. I'm friends with Johnny Marr. And He was the weirdest, wildest personality I think I've ever encountered in one of our shows. Ryan, do you remember this now? Like when he first started asking us what kind of music we make, and we explained that, like, oh yeah, we love that Brit rock stuff. Oasis was a huge band for us, and Blur. And then he started shitting on Blur for having strings in their music. And I was like, it doesn't Snow Patrol do that? And I don't know them the best, but he kind of just hangs around us the entire time and says increasingly cocky and just out of left field stuff. And he has this girl eventually shows up who's really pretty. And he's like, that's me date. He introduces us and he's like, I found her on Raya. We're like, what's that? He's like, it's a dating app, but only for celebrities. Like, okay, cool, man. And then we get on stage to play and he's like right in the front. And our bassist Brandon was actually kind of vibing well with him. And he's really drunk and just like rocking out to our sound. And then as we pause in between one of the songs to like tune, I guess, he just walks on stage as we're playing. And the whole audience is like, what's going on? Pretty loudly, because he speaks next to the microphone. He's like, Brandon, would you like me to buy us some cocaine? And Brandon's like, I don't know. And the guy goes, yeah, I'm gonna go get some right now. And then he just like wanders off and leaves the venue. And we addressed it to the audience. Well, that was fucking weird, huh? And like, so Snow Patrol might be a little bit of a different band than you think based on that Grey's Anatomy song, I guess. They're a little more hard rock and roll. And we finished the set, and then I think Brandon went looking for him, but the guy never returned.
No wonder that band is called Snow Patrol. So there you have it. 3 of the infinite ways a show can go south, regardless of whether a performer is trying to show off. I hope you enjoyed this edition of TMEP Show Quick Taps. Please follow, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Tune in next week when my co-host Alan Keller and I return for more Spinal Tap moments on Too Much Effing Perspective.
Although it would be as great as having armadillos in our trousers, this podcast is not affiliated with This Is Spinal Tap, and no person or entity connected with the film has sponsored or endorsed its content. The podcast is not affiliated, sponsored, or licensed by Authorized Spinal Tap LLC or Century of Progress Productions.
Too Much Effing Perspective is a Milwaukee Talkies original. Evergreen Podcast Network.